Live from Banjul, this is GRTS News broadcasting for viewers in the Gambia and around the world. And in our top stories this evening, the Gambia launches first national security strategy and security sector reform strategy. 38 aspiring lawyers enrolled into the bar as they begin another chapter in their careers. Yankuba Toure makes first appearance before the Chief Justice as the Supreme Court determines his constitutional immunity claim. And later in the sports, we will tell you about a week-long tournament designed to promote youth football. And away from home, a Turkish court will resume the trial in absentia of 20 Saudi officials over the gruesome killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. These and many more coming ahead in the news. I am Bai Ibrahim Cham. Many thanks for joining us. We begin with this press release from State House, which informs the public that His Excellency President Adama Barrow will tour the city of Banjul tomorrow, Wednesday, 25th November 2020 at 10 a.m. The tour around the city will avail him the opportunity to monitor the progress of work under the Banjul Sewage, Drainage and Roads project, which started in 2019. The tour will begin in Banjul South through Banjul Central and ends at Banjul North. All media houses are invited. The release concludes. The National Security Strategy and Security Sector Reform Strategy has been launched. The draft document, which will guide the operation of the security sector, has gone through a series of processes with support from international organizations. Details in this report by Aminata Isaina.
The launch of the National Security Strategy and Security Reform Strategy is a momentous attainment to the security sector. According to officials, this will avail the government-wide analysis and description of the strategies and plans to achieving standard security institutions. The launching of the document brought together cabinet ministers, the security sector, civil society organizations and partners such as the UN and other international organizations. The strategic document will serve as the government's predominant plan to ensuring the country's security and to serve as directive for implementing the country's national security policy.
As it is commonly known that there cannot be sustainable development without stable, effective, and democratically accountable security institutions. Therefore, as part of his commitment in attaining socio-economic development in the Gambia, His Excellency Mr. Adama Barrow, President of the Republic and Commander-in-Chief of the Gambia Armed Forces, took first steps in launching the security sector reform process in 2017, and subsequently the National Security Policy in May 2019, all with a view to ensure he laid a very solid foundation for his national development ambitions, programs, and projects.
The National Security Strategy will play an important role in determining a comprehensive strategy for the security sector reform. The United Nations Resident Coordinator, Sarafin Wakana, lauded the government for taking such an imperative step.
From a global dimension, the United Nations commitment to 2030 agenda and sustaining peace makes clear that in our reform efforts, we should support security systems which are people-focused, right-sized, and accountable. SSR can be instrumental to achieving Target 16.1 of the Agenda 2030 to prevent and reduce violence in all its forms and to enable people to experience safety and security.
Officials say the National Security Strategy will be a tool for building legitimacy for security actors in the eyes of a population The document addresses the challenges to reforming national security structures. The Minister for Justice, Daud A. Jallow, outlined the vitality of both documents and called on the National Security Office to roll out an awareness campaign to keep the public abreast with national security matters.
It could be recalled that shortly after His Excellency President Adama Barrow took over the political leadership of this country in 2017, a technical working group was duly commissioned to conduct comprehensive security sector reform assessment to ascertain the gaps and malfunctions of the security sector that his government inherited. This assessment was completed in December 2017, and the report came up with recommendations that would enable the sector to be transformed to meet the needs of the state and the people's aspirations. The report made several findings relating to deficits and malfunctions of the security sector that needs urgent redress. It further recommends the need for a national security policy and a civilian-controlled security sector based on democratic principles, institutions, respect for human rights, and rule of law.
Certificates were awarded to the team that were entrusted in drafting the documents. The team comprised of different actors from dynamic sectors. The National Security Strategy and Security Sector Reform Strategy are dynamic and multifaceted documents that accommodated all citizens, including women, to promote gender parity. Officials believe the document will help restore public trust and as well guide the operation of the security sector. Aminata Sanyang, GRTS.
38 aspiring lawyers have been successfully enrolled into the Gambia Bar after 4 years of intensive studies at the Gambia Law School. The ceremony was presided over by the Chief Justice and senior members of the General Legal Council at the High Court Complex in Banjul. Babasila attended the ceremony and files in this report.
The beginning of a new journey for these young legal practitioners who have now registered to become baristas and solicitors, driving the vanguard of justice and truth as dictated by the activists of the profession as they took their oath of allegiance. This was not an easy journey with years of hard work, studies and sacrifice invested to reach this pedestal, but the task ahead is more challenging, requiring honesty and integrity.
As legal practitioners, your comportment must be exemplary within and outside the courts. We will not enjoy the confidence of our clients, the general public, or the citizenry if we ourselves fall short of the ethical standards of conduct and behavior expected of us. With respect, I believe as a profession, we can and must do better in this regard.
TAL also challenged young lawyers to continue learning and always seek advice from their seniors, as well as to deliver sound legal advice to their clients. The Gambia Chief Justice Hassan B. Jallow delivered an inspirational speech, taxing the young baristas to constantly observe decorum as ministers of justice working to uncover the truth.
There is nothing more important than honesty and integrity in this profession. No matter how competent, no matter how much materially successful, if your reputation falls short in relation to honesty and integrity, you cannot be deemed to have been a successful member of the bar. And as ministers in the Temple of Justice, you must fight for the truth and for justice. Truth, justice, and honesty exceeds any responsibility that you may have to clients, to yourself, or to any other person. You are first and foremost ministers of justice in this great temple. And so you must abide and respect your duty to be honest, to be people of integrity, to people who love and who fight for truth and for justice.
Abdullah Koli, a senior state counsel at the Ministry of Justice, made a statement on behalf of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. These young aspiring lawyers will remarkably support judicial indignization efforts and improve the country's legal system, which is on the verge of holistic transformation, engaging necessary reforms since the change of regime in 2017. For GRTS News, I am Baba Silla.
The Gambia, like the rest of the world, is reeling from the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak. The government's COVID-19 response has been a success, but there is still more work to be done to return the economy to pre-COVID-19 days. To help us discuss some of the ways the Gambia can beef up her post-COVID-19 recovery, we are joined by management consultant Aliu Badara Senghor. Many thanks for coming on GRTS News, Mr. Senghor.
Thank you very much for having me.
First of all, the COVID-19 pandemic has actually slowed down economies around the world. It's not just the Gambia. Now, what is the most telling impact of it on the Gambia's economy, though?
Thank you. I think the Gambia is really a small open economy. If you're looking at it, the services sector is the biggest driver of GDP growth, accounts for about 60% out of GDP. And if you look at it, two critical sectors. Firstly, the tourism sector, which I think every Gambian is very well aware of. If you look at it in terms of gross domestic product, accounts for about 20% of GDP if you take direct and indirect effects.
Okay.
Hires 42,000, creates 42,000 direct jobs, on over 107,000 jobs.
Okay.
So obviously with the pandemic, a lot of traveling, the tourist season, that's a significant impact. But also the trading sector. Gambia is also a significant regional trading center. So the COVID has had a significant impact on those particular two sectors, which are very important for the economy.
Well, they say every challenge always comes with an opportunity. What opportunities has the COVID-19 actually offered to the Gambia government?
I mean, I think I look at it more as an opportunity to potentially look at certain sectors. For example, if you look at the tourism sector, for example, the proposition has been very similar for a long time, which is the sun, sand, and sea, targeting the European. It's like a European winter destination.
Okay.
I think there's been talk to broaden the program for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
I really see this as a significant impetus to how we can move that agenda forward.
Okay, now debt cancellation can help boost the economies of developing countries like the Gambia. Should the government pursue this, and how?
I think that has been part of the agenda for the government of the Gambia, even before COVID, just because we had really high public debt levels. So if you look at some of the engagements that were happening with our multilateral and bilateral partners, and they've had a kind of success in that regard. Not debt cancellation, but we've had really debt restructuring. If you look at it, particularly at the last spring meetings of the IMF World Bank, they kind of helped to bring a lot of the Gambia's debt partners together, themselves and other bilateral partners. And the Gambia has secured debt referrals, not cancellations, which would be better, but at least debt deferrals. If you look at it, I think it's about 150 odd million US dollars until 2024, about 9% of GDP. So in theory, this should help create some fiscal space to help support some of the other objectives of the NDP, particularly around, some of the social programs and particularly also like infrastructure expenditure, etc. That is what we hope to have in theory. Debt cancellations, I think, would have been better, but I think that's a very difficult, a hard agenda to push. So I think the question is really, now that we have commitments, at least 150 million, how can we maximize this fiscal space? Those savings, I think it's very imperative that the government uses it wisely. Particularly investments that are going to help to generate more growth, particularly if you're looking at 2024, 2025, the amortization payments on some of these, particularly on the principal amortization payments, will re-kick in again, and it will grow significantly. So if these savings that we have now, if we use them wisely, it can help support growth, which will put us in a better position over the next 5 years.
Well, in this case, what role can the private sector actually play in recovering from COVID-19?
I mean, I think it's a nuanced question, if I can say. The private sector in the Gambia, I think there's a lot of talk around positioning the private sector as the key driver of growth. I think in theory, it doesn't happen a lot, I'd say. I think there still needs to be a whole lot more work done to position the private sector as the key driver of growth. I think, but one of the key things, and this is a broader discussion, but really, I think we really need to see the government transition from an owner-operator in large respects to more of a policy maker and regulator. I think that the government still plays a significant role in economic decision making in this country, and I think one of the best ways to do that is how can we transition some of those roles to the private sector. I think, but this is a broader discussion really that is beyond the scope.
But it's very interesting. But based on the lessons learned from COVID-19 outbreak, what safeguards should be in the national budget to cater for emergencies?
I think that will be very, very difficult. I think really, if you look at the budget of the Gambia, it's, you know, the government struggles to create really fiscal space to because even if you look at the government resources and expenditure, on average, you're talking about maybe we raise enough resources to cover about maybe 60% of the budget. The rest of it, you're looking at grant expenditure and loans. So really, the government doesn't have that fiscal space to have maybe emergency funding windows, etc. So I think that is something that would be really hard. Now, what is material, I say, is how can we deepen the structural reform agenda of the country? That over time is something that would help. So some of these reforms that we've been talking about a lot, you know, some of these structural reforms, I think it's very, very important that we deepen them and we position the Gambia for growth and above the targets that we hear about 5.5% of GDP. That's not enough. You know, we really want to position the growth, and maybe this debt restructuring, 150 odd million, can be significant, 9% of GDP. How can we maximize the use of that to help in that journey to create the fiscal space that the government needs to be able to maybe have more flexibility for emergency level programming, etc.
Thank you very much for your time here, Aliu Badara Senghor, management consultant. I wish we had more time to actually delve into these issues.
Thank you very much for your time.
The Gambia Revenue Authority and the Gambia Press Union have jointly organized a day's tax seminar for the members of the media. The training, which is funded by the UNDP and the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, is aimed at broadening the understanding of journalists on GRA's tax functions and strategies. Zainabu Jan has the rest of that story.
This training for the media fraternity is an important one, as the tax seminar will avail journalists the information from the Gambia Revenue Authority, said the Deputy Commissioner of the Revenue Authority.
Taxation in the 21st century provides the basis for a social contract between the state and its citizens, which demands that the latter provide tax revenues to the state in return for the delivery of public goods and services. In this contract, the media can provide a vital information link to inform the citizens about their duties and responsibilities, including but not limited to voluntary compliance with their tax obligations under the laws.
The Gambia Revenue Authority has launched a strategic scheme to engage the media partners in effective taxation and revenue collection. This capacity training is designed to raise media awareness and knowledge on the work and operations of the Revenue Authority, its functions and development strategies to support effective reporting of revenue and taxation activities. The media is a vital tool for public outreach and understanding, which can hugely boost the impact of the tax reform agenda and improve compliance. A GRA media partnership is crucial to advance public awareness and misconceptions over tax matters.
I believe after this training, when you, the journalists, go back, you will be able to adequately report on the taxes in this country, particularly the various amount of taxes that are administered by the Gambia Revenue Authority. I'm made to understand the GRA, particularly the domestic tax unit, administered nothing less than 10 taxes in this country, not less than 10. But I'm sure when we go around the table here, hardly will you have any journalist who can give us all the 5 accurately. Not because we don't want to know, but it's an area that is not key, perhaps core to our job, so we do not take interest in it. But this is one area that if the Gambia is to develop as a tax-based country, that people need to know about.
Board Chair Lucy Faijang spoke about the functions of the GRA and outlined the effect of media awareness in boosting public understanding of GRA operations.
We have a very important production function, which production stands for GDP. So to have the GDP, we normally write it as Y. Y is equal to, or rather, Y is a function of savings minus investments. So it's very important to have savings and investments. So that's where you have the banking system, the financing, the monies happening.
The media plays an important role in creating public understanding of new tax reforms, according to GRA Commissioner General Yankuba Dabo.
Today's event is special in many aspects, in that it is the first tax education forum dedicated to the media fraternity. The objectives of the seminar is to share with you tax revenue collection processes and procedures and other tax administrative matters with reference to the revenue laws.
Participants in the day's seminar shared the benefits of the capacity training, which is meant to facilitate their understanding of revenue information and how to report on it.
reporting on taxes, it is quite important for me as a journalist to know some of these things. That's why you realize in the Gambia, we barely report into issues of tax collection. So this is an opportunity that will avail us that chance to learn more about tax issues, and hopefully that will be of best use so that we can inform properly the general public as to how their monies has been collected and how their monies are being spent.
As the training concludes, journalists will increase their engagement with GRA officials on tax reforms, tax returns, and various revenue matters to meaningfully inform the public. Zainabu Jain for GRTS News.
The Minister of Tourism and Culture has continued his tour of tourism facilities across the country. In the Central River region, the minister visited various heritage and cultural sites, among them the Mungo Park Heritage Site, where officials of the National Council for Arts and Culture disclosed plans of reviving the abandoned site. Uminjai is with the tour delegation, and she files in this report.
During a visit to the Mungo Park Memorial Site by the Tourism and Culture Minister, officials of the National Center for Arts and Culture disclosed plans to facelift the Memorial Park. Located in Sami Karantaba in the Central River region, the Mungo Park Memorial Park is one unique historic site that was erected by Governor Sir Hilary Rodolph Robert in 1944 in commemoration of the anniversary of Mungo Park's memorial voyage to find the source of River Niger. That journey didn't succeed as the great Scottish explorer was killed a few kilometers to Niger, present-day Port Harcourt. NCAC, in its efforts to revive and secure the cultural heritage site, is looking forward to add value to the vital tourist site that matters in Gambian history.
What this site is important because it shows Gambia's contribution to the development of exploration in the 18th and 19th century, one. Number two, also, the people of Scotland, Mungo Park is their #1 hero. In fact, they always, pester us. When are you transforming that place? Because they are really, they see this place as part of the history, of Scotland also.
Access road to the Mungo Park site was key among the tourism minister's recommendations. This, he said, his ministry and line offices are working hard to ensure a good feeder road is built for easy access to the site. The minister also outlined plans on the way to build a hotel on site.
About 3 kilometers walk. Yeah. I think if we have a feeder road there, it makes it easier. So I think that's doable. That is doable. Once you start the project, then we will now engage our counterparts and then to see how best we can build the access so that people who want to come here can drive straight in their jeeps or cars, with their children to come and reach this place to be able to have an inside of it.
Construction works at the Sotuma Eco Lodge and Kunkiling Ecotourism Camp in the Central River region are making progress. After an inspection of construction works and briefing with the project contractors, Minister Ba shared his impression on the level of progress.
Taking into account the fact that there has been very heavy rains this year, unprecedented amount of rain we receive, access to these facilities was not very easy. And that's the same issue with Kunkiling. And we've seen Bara, substantial progress. And what we saw also here, I think in the next 2 weeks when you come here, I believe that they would deliver within the 7 months that they have promised to deliver this project.
Development in the tourism sector is going far beyond construction works. The GTHI is setting standards, promoting regional tourism, training youths in various regions on tourism and hospitality. The trained youths, Minister Ba stated, will have employment opportunities through the EcoSites projects. Ominjai, GRTS.
A two-day validation meeting of the draft community and rural development and the multidisciplinary facilitation team is underway at the Sadauda Kerba Jawara Conference Center in Bigelow. The forum is organized by the Department of Community Development under the Ministry of Lands and Regional Government, supported by UNICEF and UNDP. Usman Mane reports.
This is the first draft policy formulation of the Community and Rural Development and Multidisciplinary Facilitation Team of the Department of Community Development under the Ministry of Lands and Regional Government since its establishment in 1977. The department is refocusing on a more human-centered development approach anchored on participation of people and decentralized structures. Nsa Keno project, supported by UNICEF and UNDP, is among the development programs that the draft policy will amplify. In his keynote address, the Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Lands, Demba Esba, noted that the community and rural development policy will reorganize and modernize rural societies towards revitalization of rural economy and to integrate into national economy. He also pointed out the aims of the MDFT.
The purpose of this MDFT policy is to enhance and rationalize our extension services delivery in the context of a centralized development environment on a participatory and democratic basis, thus contributing to our national effort directed towards poverty reduction and accelerated growth and economic development.
The 10-year policy, which runs from 2020 to 2030, will guide rural development practitioners, including service providers and communities, to strengthen extension services premised on participatory and democratic ideals. The Director of Community Development, Fatou Jiba, highlighted the shift in approach in development practices.
The policy is driven to promote a people-centered development, people directing their own agenda from design through evaluation to promote their quality of life and achieve human rights for all Gambians. Equally important to note that the MDFT policy is a product of previous pilot experiences and effort to strengthen decentralized and participatory planning at community level over the years.
Afri consulting firm were contracted to produce the drafts. Lead consultant Foma Sise explained the methodology used in the process.
We have extensively consulted wide and far regional governors, local government officials, the UN system, the former directors, from people from the sector, more importantly, the MDFT members themselves. We were in the field.
The UNDP are the funding partners of the project, and represented at the meeting was Abdou Toure, who urged participants to critically look into the draft to produce a robust document for community development.
One of the ingredients for the successful policy implementation is really how much have the people who are affected by the policy take part in the formulation of the policy. So because if you don't see yourself in the policy, it's a challenge, it will be a challenge to implementation. So really, your voice matters.
The meeting continues on Wednesday, where participants will examine the multidisciplinary facilitation team policy. These policies will further empower stakeholders in rural Gambia for a more participatory and inclusive development processes. Usman Mane, GRTS.
A panel of judges at the Supreme Court of the Gambia, led by the Chief Justice, on Monday heard the case of embattled former junta member and one-time minister Yankuba Toure following the referral of the matter by the High Court for determination of the constitutional immunity claimed by Mr. Toure. Today's hearing was attended by 3 prominent human rights lawyers who appeared as friends of the court, which include barristers Nene Cham, Gay Sow, and Saliu Tal. The team of human rights lawyers introduced themselves as friends of the court, who are there to assist the court by putting arguments in support of an interest that might not be adequately represented by the parties in the case. The Chief Justice, however, asked the human rights lawyers to make their application and attached their brief of argument, as well as the state and the defense. The case was adjourned to 2nd December for mentioning and 4th December for hearing. The accused Yankuba Toure was a former junta member and one-time minister. He is being tried on a murder charge for his alleged participation in the murder of Usman Korosise, former finance minister who mysteriously died in June 1995. Mr. Toure, however, denied any wrongdoing, and since then he is being detained at the State Central Prison at Mile 2. The world will observe this year's celebration of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The campaign seeks to reflect and address issues of abuse and harassment women and girls continue to face at homes, in streets, and various institutions, thereby threatening the future of especially younger women. In a televised statement by the Minister of Women's and Children's Affairs, Mrs. Fatu Kinte calls for an end to all forms of gender-based violence.
The period from 25th November to 10th December is internationally recognized as the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The period marks the international campaign to challenge all forms of violence against women and girls, starting from 25th November, which is International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, to 10th December, which is Human Rights Day. The theme this year is Orange the World: Fund, Respond, Prevent, Collect. With this, the UN Women is calling upon governments around the world to fund women's organizations, respond to survivors' needs, prevent by addressing social norms that normalize violence against women and girls, and collect data to inform policies and programs. This year's celebration of 16 days of activism is different as it is taking place in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. We in the Gambia will avoid public gatherings and rather use the print and electronic medium in our campaign. Gender-based violence is a human rights violation, and it undermines the health, dignity, and autonomy of its victims. As you observe the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, let us remember that thousands of women and girls continue to be victims of all forms of violence. In addition to battery, rape, there is also sexual harassment in the homes, workplaces, learning institutions, in the streets, in public transport, and the list goes on. Many of these go unreported and continue to be shrouded in the culture of silence, giving perpetrators the opportunity to continue offending women and girls. It is unacceptable that these human rights violations continue to threaten the lives and futures of so many women and girls. It is an affront on their human dignity, an assault on their health, and an impediment to the well-being of their families, communities, and country. Human development cannot be fully achieved as long as women and girls continue to suffer from these human rights violations or live in fear of them. The issue is not only devastating for survivors of violence and their families, but also entails significant social and economic costs. Failure to address these issues also entails a significant cost for the future. One characteristic of a gender-based violence is that it knows no social or economic boundaries and affects women and girls of all socioeconomic backgrounds. Protecting women and girls from violence and harmful practices is not only a moral and human rights imperative, it is also critical to the economic and social progress of the Gambia.
Still on the 16 days of activism, a press briefing was on Tuesday held at the Action 8 Conference Hall in Kanifing, as this year marks the 28th anniversary of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence campaign initiated in 1991 by the Center for Women's Global Leadership. Kajata Juwara reports.
Year marks the 28th year of the 16 days of activism against GBV campaign initiated in 1991 by the Center for Women's Global Leadership. The 16 days international campaign runs from 25th November to 10th December on the global theme Orange the World: Fund, Respond, Prevent, and Collect. However, at local level, the campaign theme for this year is Orange the Gambia, strengthen domestic funding to enhance the national response to combat sexual and gender-based violence. Speaking at the press briefing, the chairperson, NGBV, described gender-based violence as a severe human rights violation.
The ILO Convention recommends that national governments adopt laws, regulations, and policies to ensure the right to equality and non-discrimination in employment and occupation, including for women workers and other persons belonging to more vulnerable groups.
She said it is a violence against women and girls that has lifelong damaging effects. The Executive Director, Action Aid The Gambia, Omar Baji, said the 16 days of activism campaign this year focuses primarily on response during COVID-19 period, as well as advocacy on the ratification of the Prevention and Safeguarding Vulnerable Women in All Walks of Life.
NGBV has also carried out various advocacy and campaign work to influence policies and laws to enhance women and children protection. They have engaged in the development of training materials relevant to our context. ActionAid is proud to be associated with the Network Against Gender-Based Violence, and we will continue to further our partnership efforts and collaborate with the network to deliver on the key promises made in our strategies.
The National Coordinator, NGBV, Falu Sow, said the campaign aims to harmonize efforts to end all forms of sexual and gender-based violence in the Gambia.
Gender-based violence is a serious human rights violation. It inequitably affects females and thus often equated to violence against women and girls. It comes in many forms: physical, sexual, emotional, and you name them, all of which have serious consequences, ranging from immediate to long-term physical, psychological trauma, as well as socio-economic effects. The consequences negatively affects not only women's general well-being and their realization of their potential, but it also depletes our nation's human resources and capital, hence undermining our development efforts.
He used the opportunity to pay homage to victims and activists of gender-based violence, such as the 8-year-old girl who was brutally raped and murdered 3 years ago, a 12-year-old girl who was recently abused, and activists like the late Sisi Jaha Sawane and Abdou Jata, who always advocate for a Gambia free of violence against women and children. Reporting for GRTS News, I am Khadija Tujuara.
And to this press release, it has been brought to the attention of the Ministry of Agriculture that certain persons and private entities are engaged in groundnut buying directly from farmers and eventual evacuation of the produce outside the country without following due process. The public is hereby reminded that purchasing groundnuts directly from farmers is limited to the National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation, formerly Gambia Groundnut Corporation, through approved cooperative primary marketing societies across the country. Therefore, individuals or institutions that intend to purchase groundnuts during the 2020-2021 groundnut marketing season should register with the National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation to have the mandate to be engaged in the buying process. It is illegal for anyone or institution to engage in groundnut purchasing without a valid registration certificate issued by the NFSPMC. Anyone in violation of this proclamation will face severe penalties, which will include impounding purchase consignments. The ministry would like to remind the general public that the price of groundnut for the 2020-2021 cropping season is $20,700 per metric ton as a result of the subsidy provided by the government of the Gambia. It is therefore prudent and imperative that the groundnuts produced remain in the country for the benefit of the national economy. The release concludes. We will be back with the sports news right after this break in just a moment.
For the first time in the Gambia, your favorite GSM operator, Africell, is the first and only GSM operator to launch a brand new technology called the eSIM. The eSIM simply means you can use your phone without a SIM card. Do you have an iPhone 11, any of the iPhone X series, a Google Pixel 3, or any new phone that supports the eTech on one number without having a physical SIM card in your phone? Enjoy this brand new technology for the first time in the Gambia, brought to you by Africell. eSIM, your phone without a SIM card. For more information, please call 111. Where Africell goes, nobody dares to follow.
Grassline Sports Management recently organized a Sports Week tournament for football academies with a view to promoting and developing youth football. Farmer Baji covered the event and he tells us more.
This is the beginning of a series of sporting activities earmarked by the Grassline Foundation for young people involved in the sport activities. 4 football academies of different categories converge here to engage in a day-long sporting expo and activities preparing young footballers for a career in the game. These young football players can hardly hide their feeling as they wait for the games to begin. The session is not about the results. Coaches here want these youngsters to showcase their talents and potential. Organizers aim to create a massive mentorship program to advance youth football, guaranteeing a place for these players in the professional game.
We use sports as a tool to reach to the youths, to motivate them and encourage them, to engage them and also assist them for whoever we feel needs necessary assistance. We will support them in our best way.
It has been refreshing for me to come and witness such a remarkable tournament where I've seen some tantalizing skills from young people. And I think this is what our country needs. Because when we talk about football, it has to be for the young people, and it starts from the grassroots. And I think this is where grassroots comes in. So we need to the development of sports, in particular football in this country.
Mustafa Dabo, the interim president of the organization, commended the sports management and called for closer collaboration to sustain the program.
For the youths, we just have to focus, be very ambitious, focus, and then we, the elders, the adults, should also make sure that they provide a conducive, environment where the youths can excel. We need that. We need solid policies that is youth focused. We need the government also to support the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Department of Youth and Sports, and other youth organizations to ensure that they meet their objectives.
It was a fun-filled event for these young footballers who demonstrated immense talents on the pitch. Grassline Foundation represents the current move to support grassroots development with goals to promote and develop youth sports through participatory activities, training and mentorship. Farmer Abaji, GRTS News.
Well, that was all we have time for you, but here's a quick reminder of our top stories. The Gambia government has launched the country's first national security strategy and security sector reform strategy. The draft document will guide the operation of the security sector. 38 aspiring lawyers have been enrolled into the bar as they begin another chapter in their careers at a ceremony at the High Court complex in Banjul. Yankuba Toure has appeared before the Chief Justice as the Supreme Court determines his constitutional immunity claim. Grassline Sports Management recently organized a Sports Week tournament for football academies with a view to promote and develop youth football. And away from home, a Turkish court will resume the trial in absentia of 20 Saudi officials over the gruesome killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back at 2200 hours with another bulletin.
In a country always thirsty for more, A team of superheroes with special powers unite to redefine the way we are connected. Make way for Jolly Man and his unbeatable smartphone power, coming with 100 free minutes, expanding over 30 days and 30 nights. The $1,500 smartphone empowers you with the dual SIM, FM radio, and 50 days of social media. Activism got offers with the power to change the world. In a country